What's up, beautiful people? They call me SLK, comedian, actor, producer, just a funny guy. And this is how I make my daily 2K. So let's see, how would you describe what you do? Interesting. So when I was starting out, I used to say, I crack ribs for a living. I just made it sound, but yeah. By the way, fun, I used to have this joke where I was like, every profession says God was the first. Farmers will say God was the first farmer because he planted trees. Lawyers will say God was the first lawyer, blah, blah, blah. But comedians too can say that because God was the first comedian. Because for him to create Eve, he cracked Adam's rib. Anyway, so, but yeah, what do I do? How do I describe what I do? Simple. I've evolved from just making people laugh to giving people a reason to laugh. What I've evolved into is I do my thing. I do what I really am inspired to do. And then the people that love it gravitate towards me. And that's where arts it's different from the business, as it were. And yeah, so I would say that I give people a reason to laugh. I give people my perspective, or not necessarily my original perspective anyways. It might be something that just goes through my head. Maybe not what I really think, but I just give them a reason to laugh. Like, there's a funny side to it. It's a funny side to serious issues, or I'm just telling true stories as it is, or as they are. And also, yeah, create stories and make people happy, make people laugh, and, do art. I'm an artist without a good voice. Yeah. Did you get any formal training for it? I would say yes and no. Yes, in the sense that I've read books, before. If you call that formal training, well, fair. I've read some comedy books. But I think much of comedy, especially stand-up, is autodidactic in the sense that you are going to, it's called self-learning, yeah? So yeah, I would say it's autodidactic. I would say practice. I've been hosting comedy clubs since 2013. Shout out to Omo Baba #1. I was one of the hosts of his comedy club before I now started doing my thing 4 years ago, or 3.5 years ago, so yeah. I've been hosting comedy clubs. Imagine hosting comedy clubs or doing stand-up comedy every Wednesday for how long now? Yeah, do you understand? So yeah, practice makes perfect. Even writing, the more you write, the better you become at identifying jokes. When I started out, I only had like 1 or 2. I could count the number of jokes I had, but I just started to get a hang of it, and now joke writing is like this. So yeah, autodidactic, practice. Yeah. When did you first think this was a career that could financially sustain you? Well, thanks to people like Alibaba, though, I kind of knew. I mean, I'm not the first stand-up comedian in Nigeria. I'm not the first stand-up comedian in the world. I've seen stand-up comedians do great stuff, even financially. We've seen, although naturally stand-up comedians are conservative people. We're not as I'm trying to look for a better word. We're not as obvious as artists, when it comes to money. We don't really, in fact, you see some of the richest comedians still talking a little bit about poverty and all of that stuff. So we're not exactly the obviously wealthy people, even all around the world. I recently discovered that Chris Rock has a private jet. Not recently, I discovered that Chris Rock had a private jet from as far back as 2020. So the truth is, I started comedy when I was in school. I was in Covenant University at the time. Shout out to Covenant University, by the way. I started comedy when I was in year 3, 2009, basically. And at the time, is this the first time I'm saying this? It's probably the first time I'm saying this. What my pocket money then from home was, when I was in school, I was collecting from home 15,000. I was collecting 15,000 naira per month. And then my parents increased it to 20K. So I was collecting like 20K per month. But in school, then I would do gigs for 10K, and I'll probably do like a lot. And so at a point, I didn't really need, I didn't really need home. In fact, a lot of times I'll even go to the cafeteria with my guys. So yeah, at that point, I kind of like suspected that I'll do this full time. And besides, comedy is all I know how to do. So yeah, whether it was financially rewarding or not, I was still going to do it anyways. I mean, comedy generally. So yeah, that's it. What was your first gig? Now, this is interesting because it comes in cadres. If you are talking about gig in terms of my first stand-up comedy performance, and that would be 2009, December. That was Ima Oh My God's first show, actually. It was done somewhere in Ogba, December 18th, if I'm not mistaken. December 18th, 2009. It was a Saturday, and I was the first performer. Obviously, he didn't pay me. He's still owing me. He didn't pay me. There was no agreement to be paid. But I was like the opening act. I remember vividly. But if you're saying my first paid gig, that would be in school. There's this thing we call summer. I think SWEP or summer, one of the two. One guy was supposed to have his birthday, and he gave it. Now, I was in school for summer. My parents did not send money at the time for something, and I didn't have money. This guy paid me 1K. I swear that 1K was like 1 million to me because he fed me. That 1K fed me for like 3 days. I'm not even joking. Back then, like it was crazy. So yeah. Then if you're talking about like first official pay, to be the first wedding I hosted, that was in 2010. I remember also like 2010. I remember vividly. My roommates clothed me. Like I went for the wedding. I was looking like the groom. But yeah. So we can always put that in perspective. But yeah, those are my first gigs in terms of you choose your peak. What is the worst experience you've had in your career? Now, all around the world, bombing, I'm talking stand-up comedy now, bombing, which means your joke did not work. Your performance was, like they say abroad, your performance stank. You stank, or your performance did not go well, basically. So bombing is part of the job. Every comedian, Dave Chappelle has told the story of when he bombed, Chris Rock, everybody, the greats, Bovey, I guess. I believe the greats have bombed at some point. But yeah, there was a time, it was a comedy, it wasn't even a comedy club. It was Nomolus Live. Shout out to Nomolus, but okay, it's late. Respect, RIP Nomolus. Nomolus had this thing called Nomolus Live. He used to do it in the Ikeja GRA. This was 2012 that I got to know of it. We started going there. I performed like 2 or 3 times, even gotten a standing ovation. Now, there was this time I was now about to perform, but for some reason, again, I'm very academic about stand-up. I'm very proper. Okay, this. So, and at this time, I was still young in the craft, so I had not known how to navigate when people were not on my level or we're no more on the same frequency. This was around 12. I'd never really performed when people had gotten to a particular realm. You know, when the conversation had gone to another level, I was still coming to do my, I used to perform around 9, 10, when people were sane, when people pay attention to you and all of that stuff, which is normal, which is what it's supposed to be, yeah? So at this time, for some reason, they were bent on calling me. I told them that, don't worry, I'm not going to perform anymore. I don't think this is my frequency. This is not where I thrive, I don't have jokes. I mean, I'm coming from Covenant University. I don't have jokes for you people. But they said, no, you have to clear. So I went upstage and I bombed real bad. Like, they were not on my frequency. And I'm not even trying to make an excuse for myself. I mean, now, obviously, I'll do way better in any kind of setting, but I'm just saying that it wasn't my thing at the time. And it was so bad because they usually sing out comedians that did not do well, which is another terrible thing. They were about to sing, she. I've seen them do it to other people before at other times. Just as they were about to do it, Nomolus came in, stepped in, saved the day, and that was quite embarrassing. It actually got to me, but yeah, thankfully they didn't get to sing me out. But yeah, off the top of my head, that's probably the most embarrassing time. I mean, now I don't really even care much if I bomb now. It's probably your fault. What's the best thing about being a comedian? I don't think there's any more reward in the world, like this personal now, than you standing on stage and seeing people reel in laughter. I mean, reel in laughter. My comedy special that is about to drop, it's Payback, has that a lot of those, and you could see from my expression and people get to admire that about, like, I just love to hear people, you know, it's like you're killing it, you know, when you're killing the sound. And I also noticed that this is one of the most, stand-up comedy is one of the most coveted art forms in terms of not necessarily the financial reward, but just the fact that people want to be the one to make the room laugh. So I've had a lot of people, even big celebrities, rich people, come to me and saying they want to do stand-up. And I know that feeling. Trust me, is a beautiful art form. You know, standing on stage. I always say this, that stand-up is that art form where, like, an artist is singing, he has a backup art, he has backup singers, he has drummers, he has a band on stage. At worst, he has a DJ, he has a backing track, you know. Dancers go on stage with other dancers, but you see a stand-up comedian goes on stage, just only him and the mic, and everybody's quiet listening to him. That's a level of command that you, unfortunately, because you don't have that talent, you would never be able to. You will never be able to feel. Yeah, sorry, you're not a comedian. You're not funny. You mean you're not funny? What are you not doing with your life? Yeah, I feel like for me, that's like the best thing about being a stand-up comedian. However, there are other things. For example, if you like to travel, you know, going on tours is something. I don't like traveling, but yeah, I like hotels. I like the hotel life, which is also beautiful. On the petty side, yeah, there's that. Being a comedian, I know what you're expecting me to say, but I don't think it's true. You know, being a comedian means you're getting all the girls. Yeah, I think it's if you're rich. So if you're a rich fool, if you can be anything and get all the girls. So I think it's a myth that comedians get all the girls. Or maybe I'm not just fine. Maybe. I think what a way to discover that you're not good looking. But yeah, the rise of skit makers has changed the comedy scene in Nigeria. Do you think it has made things better or harder for stand-up comedians? It depends on how you want to look at it. I feel there was a phase where maybe it might have been harder, and I'll explain. Again, as with anything, when it's new, when it's novel, people try to grapple with it. So there were times where it felt like people just wanted the skit makers because they were popular, they were popping, and everybody, so they wanted the skit makers for stand-up. So it felt like there was a 1 or 2 year window where they were taking our jobs. But guess what? That's the thing about stand-up. You can't fake it. So you will quickly now realize, or to host and say, okay, crack jokes, should be funny, we want you to. You now discover that skit making is totally different from stand-up. And the fact that you're a funny person, and you might actually be a funny sitcom actor, funny, it doesn't make you a stand-up comedian, because being a stand-up comedian means you are funny on demand. It means that you have jokes. And unfortunately, having jokes as an actor is totally different from having jokes as a stand-up comedian. So yeah, there was that 1 or 2 year window, 3 maybe, where people felt, oh, we're losing gigs to these guys. Well, the clients learned, and they started calling us back. They're like, oh, yeah, we now know, okay, so if you want maybe reach on social media, yeah, you can. But if you want maybe live stand-up, there are very few skit makers that can do both. I believe stand-up is the hardest in terms of technicality. So yeah, yes and no. There's also the fact that people now have different genres of comedy. Skit making is like a genre of comedy, as it were, just the same way there is R&B, there's live music, and there is a performing artist and a recording artist. Stand-up is different. and stage is different, and nobody's competing per se because we do different things. However, we are like the unsung heroes. I mean, stand-up now, because you get to see the skit makers more regularly, and yeah, it's more, is manageable, is I'm using French, is edible content, readily edible content, whereas ours is kind of like niche. So yeah. Whew. What misconceptions do people have about comedians that we get all the ladies? Again, that might just be me, maybe. But on a more serious note, what misconceptions do people have about comedians? This is very interesting because somehow the irony of it is that, and I've always said it, the irony of it is that stand-up comedians are probably the most serious people with life. It's weird. It's a weird irony, but people don't believe it. And especially in Nigeria, it's crazy that people see you at the mall, people see you anywhere, and they almost, in fact, I have a joke on this. People see you at the mall, people see you everywhere, and they see you as, like, they expect that. Some people even hit you. Why they do like say we know, you know? I'm like, you don't realize that. Some comedians have families, they are with their kids. Why are you trying to speak pidgin, trying to, you idiot, No, comedians are actually just the same way you are going about your business. They have life issues too, you know. They're not always, they're not always funny. And so yeah, you are always expecting play. Like, yeah, you should be the clown. You should be nah, it's not always like that. And yeah, I feel like that's the major misconception people have about stand-up comedians. Yeah, I feel so. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is SLK, and it has been fun answering the questions on my daily 2K.